I went out for a walk into the evening, and I asked myself, everything that I've tried to seek an answer to, it always comes back to that question, God. Then surely there must be some understanding of God that I'm not getting in the churches. And I asked myself, what is God? And the next question came up, who am I? I must be a part of him or I wouldn't be asking that question. And then I thought, well, his consciousness, he must be conscious. He can't just be an abstract force. It isn't my brain only that makes me conscious. It must be something that I'm in tune with receiving. And I realized that God had to be infinite consciousness. And I found, as I meditated on it further, walking through the night, that when I was happier, when I was more clear-minded, when I felt more in tune with the universe, it was when I was more in tune with my higher self. And when I wasn't feeling those things, it was because I was less in tune. And I decided then and there, I was 21 years old, and I said, then I've got to seek God. That's the only purpose of life. There is no other reason we've been born, but I'll go on with that later on. I really decided from then on I would give my life to God. And I remember coming back to my apartment. I was sharing it with 4 other young men, and they sort of laughed at me because they saw me so serious. And what's the matter with old Don, they called me. And I just thought, these are a bunch of yapping puppies, and I just left the room. I couldn't stand that association. And I decided that I would become a hermit. Now, mind you, I had never heard of knowing God. I'd never known that anybody could know God. I'd never read books about saints. I'd never heard anything about Indian philosophy. All I knew was what the churches had taught me, which I absolutely rejected. And yet, I knew that this was what I had to do. And I began suddenly to think, am I going crazy? Has anybody in history ever thought this way? I must be going mad. And I remember trying to go upstate New York and trying to find what I was looking for in the peace of the country. Well, my book tells all about that peace. But I found a book on my mother's shelf. Somebody had told me in Charleston about a book called the Bhagavad Gita. And I didn't know that book. I didn't know anything about that philosophy. But somehow that name, it had a resonance with me. And I found a book on my mother's shelves when I came back to her. We lived in Scarsdale, but she was living temporarily in White Plains. And first of all, I read her Bible. I didn't have a Bible of my own. And I'm afraid I bogged down in the begats. So-and-so begat so-and-so and lived to be so many hundred years, and he died. I just thought, well, if God really had wanted me to follow that way, surely he'd have introduced me in some better way to the Bible than that. Because it just didn't say anything to me. And then I saw another book on her shelves, and it said, A Short World Bible. And when I read the excerpts from the Hindu teachings, I was absolutely floored. First of all, here was something that was talking about God as infinite. Well, that deeply appealed to my scientific side. God couldn't be just a man with a long white beard or a judge waiting to condemn people to hell. It couldn't be that. He must be something more. And this infinite. But then it also said, God is not, you can't limit him. There are millions of definitions of God, but you can't say he's this or that. He's everything. And then it said that no one person and no one religion can own God. And I thought, what a relief to hear that. And my father had just been, this was the working of karma, the working of God's will, anything you want to call it. But my father had been sent to Egypt to be in charge of an oil exploration there. And I was packing my mother up to go join him. And the day I put her on the ship, that day, I walked uptown New York and I found autobiography of a yogi. I tell you, it was, if my parents had been there, I, who knew absolutely nothing about these teachings, I don't know if I'd have had the strength of will to tell them I'm going out to do this thing, which they would have thought completely crazy. But they were powerless. Mother was on a ship, Dad was over there. We didn't have airplane travel in those days. Well, there was some, but not enough for that. And this was 1948. And I got this book, and I read it between tears of joy and tears of love. It was the most moving experience of my life. I really took virtually the next bus across the country. I had never thought that I would ever do this. I was an ordinary, arrogant young man. I never dreamed that I would say this to him, but I went 4 days and 4 nights across the country by bus. I went to Yogananda. He'd just finished lecturing in Hollywood Church. The first words I addressed to him were, "I want to be your disciple." I have never regretted those words in these 61 years. It was the pivotal point of my life. And when you're on to a good thing, I'd say hang on to it. I knew I had found I have to say this too, that here I'd had a normal Western education. And on page 8 of Autobiography of a Yogi, I think it's page 8, Lahiri Mahashaya is materializing in a wheat field. I tell you, there were many things I had to put on a shelf. But what convinced me about him was himself. I had never, in the pages of a book, encountered so much greatness, so much humility, so much love, so much compassion, and so much bliss. And I had been willing to give up everything and go and live in a jungle just thinking I might somehow, with time, effort, and luck, find a little peace of mind. And in his book, he talked about the joy of God. In fact, he showed us and taught the nature of God is Satchidananda, ever existing, ever conscious, ever new bliss. Everything has come out of that bliss. Sometimes people say, well, why did God create the universe? Sri Yukteswar, my guru's guru, said that we have to leave a few questions to be answered in the divine. But I think I have an answer to that. It's the nature of bliss to want to express itself. And the more I have of this bliss, which sometimes I can hardly stand, the more I feel I want to share. I'd love to just, if anybody wants to shoot me for doing it, who cares? I don't mind at all. Because there's only one thing in life. And the reason that I have found for loving everybody is not what that man told Yogananda in Autobiography of a Yogi, the leveling unity of egoic principle that you have to take for granted. But the fact that everybody in the world is seeking that bliss, that's the reason for loving everybody.
It's always a joy to hear from Swamiji, because there's nothing like going to the source and just hearing about Swamiji's life from himself. The Master has given us so many gifts in this life, and for me, I think the greatest gift was Swamiji himself. Of course, there are so many reasons one could think that, and one thing I wanted to mention today was that Swamiji really made the spiritual path real for us. we, speaking for myself, but for many others, we read Autobiography of a Yogi. We're very inspired by it. Swamiji said Autobiography of a Yogi gives you the enthusiasm to seek God, gives you the motivation, helps you to feel that reaching God is possible, because Master wrote in such a way, so humbly, and in a way that was inviting, that we could say, well, he did it, maybe I could too. And so that was very intentional. Master talks about going to different saints, asking them for help. He told Swamiji later, he said, most of those saints I went to, they were asking me for help. He said, they called me Choto Mahashai, which means little sir. He says, it translates in English into little sir, but it doesn't mean little sir only. It means little great sir, little Peria sir. And so and Master said it was frustrating because I was looking for answers, but they were saying, no, you help me, because they could see his state of consciousness. But if he writes a book like that, then what will happen? Then everybody who reads it will say, oh, yes, I've often had the same experience. Everyone calls me little sir, and they're asking me for help, which I gladly give. It's useless. Then it's just autobiography of an ego. And we have plenty of those already. So then Swamiji shared his life with Master in such a way that it invited us in. It's very important to consider, because there were, in fact, when this book, The New Path, I was thinking about this. Swamiji asked me to write the preface of the book, the introduction to the book. And I was thinking about how many books by disciples of any master, let's generalize it, but in this particular case there weren't that many books by direct disciples, and they largely shared their own experience with Master in a way that kind of left me feeling, gosh, they were so lucky. They got to be with Master, and Master did this sweet thing for them. I'm not criticizing it. It was very devotional. But you kind of felt like an outside observer hearing about someone's great relationship with Master. One disciple came and Master said, you have come, which we would all love to hear. And he said, why don't you cook for me? You used to cook for me in my last life. Oh, how sweet. And she said, sometimes at night I would listen to him walking up and down in his room, which was right above mine, How sweet that is, but you, again, feeling a little left out of it. And Swamiji showed us what it was like to live with Master, meaning he told the stories of Master's training of him and of everybody in a way that we felt, in reading his book, that we were there. One person, in fact, had just told me that at the time I was writing this thing, that right before it, she said, when I finished reading The New Path, I felt that it was not only his life with Paramhansa Yogananda, but now I have lived with Paramhansa Yogananda too. And I hope you've had that experience as well. Again, making Master real to us in a way that Master couldn't. Master couldn't tell his life story. You could say Master was an avatar, he could do anything, and that's true. But I think one thing he couldn't do is to say what it would be like to be his disciple. Can't say this is what it's like to be my own disciple. In the Autobiography of a Yogi, in a way, you get much more about Sri Yukteswar than you do with Master, of course, in regarding discipleship, as it should be. It's the disciple's role, Swamiji said, to make the Guru real to others. That's every disciple's role. And one thing you can do, Master said, is give the Autobiography of a Yogi to others. And he said, and they will change. So that he said, you can preach through the autobiography. Find out if they're interested first before you give it to them, but do give it to them. Or you can use reverse psychology. So, this is a very, very sacred book. I don't think you would be interested. No, it's no. Maybe next lifetime. And so, So Swamiji really made Master real to us also, because he said you can't only get the Guru's teachings from his book, because Master himself said the book won't argue back with you when you're wrong. Suppose we have some wrong idea and we say, Master, and we open the book, I think I want to do this really terrible wrong thing, and isn't that okay? And you open the book to a random page, and the first word you see is yes. Thank you. Meanwhile, he's saying, no! But nope, the book says yes, and off we go. He said you can't just look at a photo of his face to see if he approves. For one thing, the face is always smiling in the photo. And it's not as if Master is there ready saying, yes, no, yes, no. It's not like that. It's just that we have to be able to feel that inside, but it has to be real. This was another thing Swamiji showed us, how the spiritual path is real, and it's not imagination. Sometimes we can have deep thoughts. Sometimes we can have deep intuitions that can be accurate. That we have an idea and then it comes true. And someone told me I was walking down the street and I thought of someone and they appeared. And I said, did they sort of appear like a genie out of a lamp? Like they're, poof, oh yes, I summoned you. Was it like that, or did they come around a corner and appeared? And said, I just couldn't tell if maybe I was just thinking of them, made them appear, made them. I said, well, possibly, unlikely, because my gosh, what happens if someone thinks about you? I was just vacationing, over in this dungeon, and I thought of you, and now you're here with me. I mean, come on. One man even said to Swamiji, when I die, this whole universe will cease to exist. So deep was his conviction of his philosophy. Swamiji said that's so easy to poke holes in that. Suppose we created this whole reality. He said, could you have composed the plays of Shakespeare? Could we have written the Tamil poetry of the Tamil poets ourselves? Or did we just dream all of that up out of our own consciousness? Impossible. Were you in bed one night going, E equals MC what? Cubed, Squared, I mean, we're not making this up in our own brains. It's made up in somebody's mind, just not ours. It is a dream, it's just not ours. It's God's dream. Master said, how do you know? Because every time you wake up, the dream is the same. Our dreams are different each night, and maybe God's are too, and days and nights of Brahma, who knows? But we're waking up into his dream, and he wants us to wake up out of his dream. But Swamiji, having been with Master, knew all the things that Master said and did. Of those that he knew, he could apply them in different situations. So, maybe Master made this statement strongly, but maybe he made another statement to balance it, depending on the situation. Maybe he never made a statement like that, in which case it added more weight to this is the right direction to go on, and so on. It was more than just knowledge, it was intuition, his relationship with Master. But, like I said, when we first come onto the path, we may be very impressed with whatever thoughts we've had, especially if they've proved true. Someone came early on to the spiritual path, early on in our time in Chennai, and he was very intuitive. And he was a little bit shocked because he found some of the people here were also very intuitive. He was like, but I'm the most intuitive person I know. It's like, yes, that's because you've been alone. But now here you are with other people. I had a friend I used to tease because he really liked to follow the spiritual path according to his ideas and his way and his opinions. And I used to say, you live in a spiritual community of one. So all in favor of doing this crazy and wild thing, say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it, but you're the only one voting. So, we have to base our approach in reference to the truth. We can drop a piece of paper and say, I command thee to fall up. Well, try again. You see, it doesn't work that way. There is an objective reality, an objective truth that we are trying to find. And that's also what Swamiji says. In fact, does he say it here? Actually, no. I shortened this letter that I'm going to read to you in a little bit because he shares so much of the story that we just heard on the video. But he shares more beyond that. Sorry, I just have to hide this. Otherwise it's like a countdown. So the other thing that happens to us when we have intuitions that are true most of the time is that God, I think, intentionally gives us the situations where they don't work out. Master, in fact, said so. He said, often we will get an idea about someone and it will be right, but also often it will be wrong. And therefore God keeps us away from the thought of self-sufficiency. That every intuition I have, it is correct. Every thought I think, it is correct. I mean, then what are we even doing here? You know, it's sort of like, you know, we're all in jail saying, I'm in the best jail, I'm exactly where I need to be, I am the Lord of the jail. It's like, okay, try the door of the cell. Does it open? If not, we're not the Lord of the jail. Our job is to get out of the jail, for sure. Master said, God made this dream to make it a nightmare, that we would all run to his eternal presence. You have to have the whole sentence. God made this dream into a nightmare. Yes, definitely. That's the teaching. That's not the teaching. Made this dream into a nightmare so we would all run to his eternal presence. Do you see? It's just as simple as God giving us hunger and God giving us food. Hunger without food is no fun. But there is plenty of food. See, he's given us the antidote. He talked about in another situation where God was testing a saint. And she was a nun, Saint Teresa of Avila, who we've talked about sometimes here. A great saint. And she became sort of infatuated with one of the people in her congregation. And she liked meeting with him in, having conversations and so on. And one time, Jesus Christ appeared next to him, and she became frozen. And he said, Teresa, I will introduce you to angels, not men. And she became captivated and frozen. And in fact, the man continued talking to her like, yeah, would you like a coffee? And she was just frozen. He finally just left. I mean, wondered if she'd mentally lost it. But then she went upstairs. And Master said that God tempts you and God also rescues you. So remember both sides. So often when we're being tested, we think I'm in it alone. You're never alone. Sometimes that's the test, is to get out of the thought that we're alone. I have to be perfect. I have to do everything right. I made that one mistake, and that's why everything careened off the rails or ruined, or that's why everybody got upset. People got upset because they got upset. In other words, we can't base the rightness of our actions on someone else. Of our actions on someone else's reaction. If you say, yes, that's why I do whatever I want and I don't care that everybody shouts at me. Well, take some feedback from the universe. I don't mean it like that. But I remember one time we had these friends. They were so angry all the time. And I was talking to another friend, and she was from Italy. And I was saying something about them. She said, but they are angry. And I said, I know, but why are they so angry? She said, they are angry because they are angry. And I thought, I kind of had a mini ecstasy in that moment. It was so true. There wasn't really a reason. Now, I want to make one point clear, because sometimes it can seem as if I'm trying to sort of sit on some high horse, as if, we have all the answers on the spiritual path, and these other people. I don't mean that at all, ever. So if it seems like I mean that, I don't. If I say I mean that, I don't. Okay? So we were talking with some friends the other day about restlessness, the restlessness of everybody in this world. And this world is a restless place. This universe, this galaxy is a restless galaxy. Why do I say that? Galaxies have three basic forms, according to astronomers. That there are some that are spiral, like this one. So we've been told. No one's taken a picture of the galaxy. When you see a picture of the galaxy, it's not our galaxy. We're in the galaxy. You can't take a picture, like a selfie, like there, you're in it. You can't take a picture of it. There's a picture of some other spiral galaxy, and they say that looks like ours. So anyway, so there are some that are spiral. There are some that are spherical. and then, a big globe, a ball of stars, and then others that are just kind of stars near each other, so you call it some kind of cluster, but it's just has no real definable shape. And it's suspiciously matching what Master statements. Some galaxies are tamasic, some are rajasic, some are sattvic. And so a spiral galaxy seems, for all intents and purposes, as a rajasic galaxy. And not even that, we're not even in the middle of the galaxy, we're on the farthest edge. But anyway, if that's not enough proof, just walk around the world a little bit more and you find a lot of restlessness. But in this conversation with these friends, I came away from it feeling that I didn't want to give this misimpression that somehow, those people are restless. Ha ha ha. I mean, how restless do we get each day? And then I remembered a statement of a Christian saint, Augustine, which Swamiji quoted a lot. He said, Augustine wrote, speaking to God, "You have made us for yourself, and our hearts are restless until they find their rest in Thee." All of us are restless until we're home in God. And that restlessness that we may see in others is just a reflection of their desire to find their home in God. Just as Swamiji was saying, that desire for bliss unites us all. In anything that anyone is doing, they're motivated by thinking it will make them happier. It will give them bliss. And so even if it turns out not to be that direction, that's the desire is the same. Their desire is our desire. And if we see someone going in a direction that is obviously not bliss-producing, why would you do that? It's obviously causing so much pain. Or can't you see that it will cause you so much pain? Master said our perspective of seeing that way is wrong is because we have taken that way in many lifetimes. As Swamiji said, someone is a drunk, and you may see someone and say, "Why do you get drunk all the time? Do you see how it ruins your life?" How do we know? Because we have been the best drunk. The drunkest. Sub say drunk. So, that's how we know. That's why we find not an attraction to it. Just like, God, I was so drunk in Egypt making the pyramids. I kept putting the stone in the wrong place. I got fired. We have those subconscious memories from past lives that say, don't go in this direction. It doesn't bring happiness. So Swamiji also made it real for us because of who he was. It's so easy to get confused on the spiritual path, to live in a spiritual community of one and get so many things wrong. We need others. We need disciples who were with Master to show us what Master taught, but to exemplify that in their lives also. For one thing, Swamiji was always joyful. And so you knew that had to be an outcome of the teaching. It had to be in line with the teaching. Sometimes people become very grim on the spiritual path. I remember a friend of mine who was a yogi and posed for his yogi photo. And I said, you don't look very happy. In fact, you look unhappy. He said, "I look grave." I say, "You look like you're headed for the grave." But it was very serious. Well, and listen, that can be a valid path, but it was not Master's path. It was one of joy. When we were we were with Swamiji in LA, and we were walking into a talk that he was going to give, meaning we were with him. He was holding on to my arm as we were walking in. And someone stopped him and said, "I'm surprised to find that you're so funny." And Swamiji, who always had a sense of humor his whole life, who enjoyed, laughter and shared laughter, it was that way when he was Master's disciple living in the monastery. In fact, one of his brother disciples said of him, after he had left, said to an Ananda member, he said, "When Kriyananda was here, laughter rang in the halls, and now this place is just a tomb." And so when this person asked Swamiji, or said to Swamiji, "You're so funny," Swamiji said, "Master was." Isn't that beautiful? I mean, not saying, well, I mean, I've made a study of it, and nice of you to comment, but I am actually quite funny. It's the way God made me. No, just that Master was. You know, the more in tune he was with Master, the more Master would flow through him, and in that way. But we saw it. It wasn't imaginary, and it wasn't abstract or theoretical. It was real. And how do I know that? Partly because, as I said, I felt closer to Master from everything I received from Swamiji. I too felt like I had lived with Master after reading Swamiji's book and most of all, listening to Swamiji, seeing Swamiji. It was very grounding and very educational that way. Not theoretical, not abstract. But also, it was this bliss that radiated from Swamiji that affected us so powerfully. And that continues. Anything I'm saying, keep in mind, still available. You can watch a video of Swamiji, you can think of Swamiji, you can read his words, you can listen to his music and feel that. Because he's right here. Master's right here. So it isn't as if that was the past. One disciple said that of Master, that of the time that she was with him, she said, I live in those days. And Swamiji said, well, of course that's sweet, and I can appreciate the sentiment. He too thought very fondly of his time with Master, but what about all the years after? And also, what about for everyone else, again, including them? We read the book of a great disciple of Master, very helpful, and we were focusing on all the wisdom in the book and the teachings. And I remember this was in the earliest days of Ananda Chennai, and I remember something Vani said. She said, I really appreciate this book, but reading this book also made me appreciate Swamiji. Because from this great disciple we have this book, which actually she didn't even write. It was compiled by people of her letters and so on. And she said, and Swamiji has given us everything. This community, this spiritual path, these techniques. How do we even know how to do the techniques right? You can learn the techniques wrong just from reading them. As clearly expressed as they are in a book, you can still get the wrong idea. How do I know? Personal experience. I'll tell you one day of how I was practicing Hong Sa when I first read it out of a book. I got one word wrong and got the whole thing wrong. I got some benefit out of it, but then I was shocked to find how you're actually supposed to practice it. That's much easier. So anyway, I wasn't quite like the person who Swamiji...
I want to say because you received the lessons in the mail.
Because I got the lessons in the mail. I mean, from Ananda, so that's how I first learned it, was just from a book. I wasn't quite like the person who said I'm having trouble with my meditation and with Hong Sa. And Swamiji said, well, let me check your practice. How are you practicing? He said, when I'm inhaling, here I'll be. Om Babaji, Om Babaji, Om Babaji, Saw. Swamiji said, no. So, but again, we need that kind of help. I mean, nobody wants to be wrong intentionally. Nobody's confused intentionally, but we need this help. But as I said, the real thing was the bliss radiating from Swamiji. That was everything. The first time I met him, that was my experience. It was also power, as Dharmini was reading about. I felt like there was an explosion that went off in the room when he walked in. I didn't even see him. I just felt it, and I was shocked. I mean, it was like nothing I'd ever experienced until I saw him again. And so that bliss is so healing. Because as I said, God has given us hunger and He's also given us food. And that food that we're seeking is bliss. And it's really who we are. It's not something we have to acquire, that I'm empty and I have to be filled with bliss. I mean, that's a valid thought. But another way to think of it is I'm just trying to reach the bliss that's already there. Just trying to unlock it. Trying to tune into it. Trying to calm down enough to feel that river of bliss running in the spine, flowing through my heart, feeling Master and Swamiji's and God's Divine Mother's presence. And so, otherwise the restlessness is because of the not feeling that bliss right now. So let's feel it. this dissatisfaction that we feel in this world with different experiences, different disappointments, all of that is just hunger for bliss. And it's a teaching. Every test we go through is a teaching. It's a lesson. And it's not necessarily the lesson that we think it is. If our first thought about the test is, oh, this is what the test is about, and you're right, then it's not a test. Just sort of 6 + 5, 11. Excellent, you passed the test. Well, that's not a test for you. That may have been a test long ago, but our tests are harder than that. Again, for them to be tests, meaning a test helps you grow. A test helps us correct a misunderstanding. The misunderstanding, though, is always the same. Master said, when speaking on this subject, a smile millionaire. You might have heard this recording. Be a smile millionaire. It's a wonderful phrase. He wrote a poem in Whispers from Eternity, I will be a smile millionaire, and he read from that. Swamiji said he was there during that satsang. He sent an email to us saying, we asked him, were you there? Yes, he said it was a blissful experience, as always, whenever Master spoke. So it's lovely to also hear that recording thinking of Swamiji in the audience. But Master said, don't seek the smiles where the smiles don't come from. That's the same lesson every time. If we touch something and get burned, God may be saying, don't do that. It doesn't mean, for example, if it's a difficult situation, like, you go to your boss and the boss is rough and you say, ugh, I don't like it. I quit because idda vendam. I mean, that's fine, but, it can make life difficult. So in other words, it may not be the situation we're in that we can get out of, but perhaps our attitude, perhaps our approach, perhaps we're personalizing it too much. All you have to do is go into the boss's office and then come out crying, and then see the next person. They come out crying too. And the next and the next and the next, and you start to see it's not really personal. It's not necessarily that I'm such an awful failure of a person. It's just that this boss likes to shout. Why? Because they're unhappy or they're stressed. Nobody shouts when they're happy. I mean, you ever see someone, ha ha, I'm filled with joy? Never. They're just basically, what else do you see who does that? You see a baby going, I'm frustrated. And when you see someone, they can be doing the same thing, though 55, 60 years old. Still just frustrated, don't we? If we have enough pain or enough disappointments and that was late, then we go, why does it have to be that? We just revert into that I am displeased. Still reminds me of a joke a friend of mine said, on the spiritual path we have to overcome our likes and dislikes. And I am halfway to God because I have overcome all my likes and I have only dislikes. So let's tune into that bliss. Let's remember that bliss is always available from the Guru. We need the Guru's help. We absolutely do. I say that most of you are disciples, most of you are Kriyabans. If someone isn't interested in a Guru, that's fine. So please don't misunderstand. But when you are, as Swamiji said, when you've got a good thing, hang on to it. And this is what will get us to freedom. This is why Kriya Yoga is the solution to every problem, as Lahiri Mahashai said. This is why bliss is always the answer, and it's always available. And if bliss is too abstract, start with joy. Start with love. Start with peace. Someone was asking or discussing about contentment. And I thought in my mind, contentment, for one thing, means that in any situation it is possible to feel peace. Maybe you don't like the situation, maybe we don't want it to continue, sure, but we can still feel peace in the moment. And meaning there is a way. I don't mean I'm successful at all every time by any means, but there is a way. It's possible to feel peace in this moment. One simple way is to just, suppose you're delayed, then bring up Swamiji on YouTube. Open the book, Autobiography of a Yogi. Look for something on your phone. Maybe this is how God wants to spend the time with you. The saints miss us sometimes. They say, why don't you spend a little time with me? And Swamiji did that. In fact, the reason we came to India in the first place, to visit, our very first visit. This is not Chennai, but earlier when we ended up moving to Gurgaon, Swamiji sent us an email saying, "When will I see you?" Go to the travel agent, just how do we fly it from America to India? It was just, and in fact, someone said to me, "I don't think you can take a vacation right now and just go off and to India. You've got a job," which I did, and they were right. I said, "But Swamiji said, when will I see you?" "Oh, okay, that's fine. Go ahead. We'll work it out." I had two bosses, and I asked the right boss, because the other boss said, "What does he think he's doing going off?" And she said, "I already said it was okay." So anyway. So Swamiji wrote this letter on his discipleship anniversary, September 12th, 2012. This was the last year of his earthly life that he celebrated the anniversary. He left his body about just 7 months later, April 21st. So this is September 12th, before that. "Today is my 64th birthday, spiritual, that is, September 12th, 1948. I just to put it in context, 2012, I went to see Swamiji a few days after that. Dharmini was with him on the day that he wrote this. "I was accepted as a disciple by Paramhansa Yogananda. How well I remember that day. How well I remember the years of seeking that had brought me to him. And I thank God for all the blessings he has showered upon me in this life. There has been suffering, yes, but as the Sufi saint Rabia said, he is not worthy of God who does not forget all his sufferings in contemplation of the beloved. I am grateful for everything, for my tests perhaps especially, since all of them have brought me closer to my cosmic beloved. I am so grateful that God heard my prayers and led me to Yogananda, and that Yogananda accepted me as a disciple. But at that time, I must admit, I wasn't seeking a guru. The very thought of becoming any man's disciple was, to me, unthinkable. I had never met anyone that I considered wise enough to follow. But I did know I needed help. I needed guidance. I was struggling and stumbling in a desert wasteland. And then, as I said, God led me to Yogananda. I found his autobiography in a New York bookstore. In fact, I found it the very day I had just put Mother on the ship to go join Dad in Egypt. This was what I had been seeking so desperately. It was my answer. I was free. I had no obligations to anyone. I took the next bus across the country to meet Yogananda, and the day I met him, he accepted me. I think mine was the most whirlwind courtship he ever had. I didn't expect the path to God to be easy, which is fortunate because it hasn't been. My body, for one thing, has given me trouble all my life. Still, here I am at 86, still energetically serving God. Mentally, I have had my hardships, but I'm grateful for all of them. As Master said, living for God is martyrdom. I am indifferent to whatever punishes my ego. Indeed, I'm grateful for it. For ego is the one thing we must overcome if we would know God. I am grateful also, however, for all the many true friends God has given me in you all. You are a wealth beyond compare. Thank you. And thank you for helping me to reach this day of supreme gladness in my life. In God's love, Swami. And just as a P.S. to that, I had chanted that chant, Master's chant, life is sweet and death a dream when thy song flows through me. When thy song flows through me is the name of the chant. And it was actually on this day, I did not go to see him. It was about a 9-hour drive away. The event, we had been told, was not open to anyone. And then that morning we heard, actually, it is open to anyone who wants to come. So Dharmini heard that and got in the car and started the 9-hour drive. I had already promised that I would lead the event that evening, and we would show a live broadcast to people who wanted to come and so on, and everybody else was on their way, so I stayed back to show that. I'm still not sure it was the right decision, but in any case we had committed and we couldn't just cancel it. It wasn't the days then of WhatsApp where you could just say canceled and everybody would read it. So, and we didn't want to leave a note on the door just saying, sorry, thanks for coming all this way, but sorry. So, but I wrote to Swamiji and I said, I'm feeling quite sad that I'm not there to meet you at the airport when you arrive, that I'm not there to see you at the event. Somehow it feels wrong. And I was saying it out of love, but I was also kind of feeling a bit sad about it. And he said, I understand. He wrote back, I understand, and I'll see you soon. And then he wrote, then joy is sweet and sorrow a dream when thy song flows through me. And so I took it as a note to cheer up, and if we can always feel him inside. So God bless you.